Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Logan Lyles with us today. Logan is a founder at DemandShift, so counts as his second company. He started that one couple months ago because he was a photographer before. He was working at various agencies and ran various podcasts before. VP of Sales, Director of Growth, I see here. Logan, I'm glad to have you on. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I've got one of those winding career paths and founder journeys, I guess you could say. I graduated college in '08 with a journalism degree, which was a great time to graduate college in the middle of the Great Recession. And two, great time to graduate with a journalism degree when that industry was going through all sorts of upheaval. So I promptly took that journalism degree and got into B2B sales. So it just kind of sat there for a while. In about 10 years, I was in local tech sales. 2018, I was starting to see how marketing was really changing. Journalists were getting into marketing because of the way content marketing and inbound was happening. And so at that point, I had the chance to join an agency called Sweetfish Media that did podcast production for B2B software brands and led sales for them. Had some great success there. We rode some really good timing in the market. I went in-house with a SaaS company for a couple of years called Teamwork in partnerships as well as marketing roles, and then went back agency side last year. And then this year founded DemandShift, offering a webinar as a service offering for B2B brands to establish not only their thought leadership, but to do effective lead gen at the same time. And it really came from the last 3 years of my career, kind of spanning the in-house marketer side and agency side again before founding DemandShift, in some of my own successes, but some of my own pitfalls with webinars that I saw that I was trying to tweak and find a better way. And so I took that into and built that into what I call the webinar fast track framework that I use with clients now at DemandShift.
Very interesting. Why webinars? Are these still relevant? Like, I haven't done webinars in 5 years.
Yeah, for me, it's been interesting because most people who've known me on LinkedIn know me kind of as a podcast host. I've hosted 7 different podcasts at this point. Like I said, I was part of a podcast specific agency for about 4 years. But it was back in 2022 when I joined teamwork.com. I started running a series called Agency Life, where we had a monthly webinar and a weekly podcast, and they were both kind of under the same media property umbrella. And I tried to take some of my podcasting approach to do webinars in a better way. Like, it doesn't have to be death by slide deck, doesn't have to be boring, doesn't always have to be the same format. We could do it interview style like a podcast, but have the benefit of having people register so that we can nurture those folks and get them onto our email list. And we saw a lot of success there. We were doing regular webinars. They were more thought leadership and educational than just product pitching. And so we were seeing more engagement. We were seeing more registrations. We were seeing repeat guests on webinars. But I hit what I call the conversion cliff, where when I looked further down funnel, how many people who were registering for webinars were actually engaging with our sales team, booking sales calls, those turning into opportunity and revenue, it really was a lot less than what I was hoping. And so in my next stop, I started doing webinars again for an agency I was working for, and I made a few tweaks in how I promoted the webinars and how my registration flow happened for webinars and my follow-up. So in those 3 areas, I was able to see an increase from like the typical 1 to 2% conversion rate from webinar registrant to booked sales call to 10 to 15%. And I was like, oh, there's something here. We can do this that's actually lead gen and actually builds brand and creates demand over time. And so to me, that's kind of how I doubled down on webinars. I saw, to answer your question though, about kind of, are they dead? Or people still using them? I saw some great data from Goldcast, which is a webinar platform where they analyzed, I think, 19,000 different companies running webinars. More people are running webinars, more people are attending. Like, things are actually up and to the right. So I'd say if you're kind of thinking, hey, webinars had their moment in 2020 when we were all stuck at home and now it's dead again, the data just doesn't kind of bear that out.
And what's special about webinars? Because yeah, webinars to me is like a live video, right?
Mhm.
Usually, a lot of people view them as a sales pitch.
Mhm.
Then, if you just add pure value and don't add any call to actions, and I guess that makes it worthless for you. How do you actually make it a good webinar? I don't watch webinars nowadays.
Mhm.
Like I don't have time for that. I actually get my info on ChatGPT. So is there like a specific ICP that will convert to a webinar? And how do you make a good one that actually is good for you and your audience?
Yeah. According to that data I was looking at from Goldcast, webinar attendance and effectiveness was pretty strong across a lot of different industries, some stronger than others. Um, I've got clients in multiple industries right now and seeing it effective. And to me, it's a little bit less about, hey, do people want to attend the live webinar? And it's more about using it as your content engine. And so if we think about if you get into a monthly cadence of doing a webinar, right, and making it educational and thought leadership, and I'll come back to how then do you also do it for lead gen here in a second. But if you just think about that aspect first, right? You're driving attendance, you're growing your email list. The transcript of that webinar can be turned into newsletter copy. You can pull clips from it just like you would a podcast to feed your social media content strategy. You can also take that and repurpose it on YouTube. You can also live stream while you're doing the webinar. So you don't have to just reach people who want to put in their email address and watch live. You can reach people who are into live streaming, just like we're doing on this one, right? On LinkedIn or on YouTube or Meta, wherever your audience is. And so that's really where I think the effectiveness is not seeing webinars as, hey, here's a channel, but live engagement, I think, is something that's going to stand out in an age of AI content. And so I think that is one unique thing about being live on video in front of a live audience right now based on where we're at. But I think the second point is just as important and maybe isn't necessarily related to the age of AI. It's just how could you use something like this where you've got this forcing function to get on the mic, to answer questions, to be engaging on video in front of your target audience and have that feed a lot more of the channels where you should be getting in front of your target audience.
I think I had the CEO of Goldcast, or at least a co-founder, on the pod not so
Yeah.
long ago. I'm using Streamyard. Is there a specific platform you'd recommend?
Yeah, I wish that there was just one platform that was really great at every single thing that I want, and I haven't quite found that silver bullet yet right now. Right now, a lot of the webinars that I'm hosting and the ones that I'm running for my clients, we're using Zoom, just because Zoom has so much of a built-in registration process that has a lot of the things that you absolutely need. Like I've seen some of the live streaming and podcasting platforms now have a webinar option, but they don't have things like, hey, attaching a calendar invite to the confirmation email, which actually puts it on someone's calendar. And I've seen, attendance rates drop from like 45% to 15% if you don't have that. So Zoom still has a lot of the table stakes that you need for effective webinars and has some of the ability to, live stream to LinkedIn, push to YouTube, those sorts of things. The repurposing quality is definitely much stronger with something like Streamyard, Riverside, or Goldcast. Those would be ones that are high on my list. But I think Zoom still has the edge in some of the technical areas just because they've been doing webinars for so dang long.
What do you think about merging podcasts and webinars? I do like these AI roundtables, but I'd be glad to do it like in the GTM context and sell my own services. So I would just bring like four experts on. I would scrape all their LinkedIn first connections and their emails, and then I would email them, "Hey, I'm going live with this guy that we're both connected with. Please tune in." And then, yeah, I guess I could talk about GTM, and we could potentially sell them on my services. What do you think about that idea? So, like mixing podcast, my growth hacking background, and also webinars.
Yeah, I really like the idea of mixing podcasts and webinars, and that's been part of my own journey, tapping into other people's audiences, just like we're doing with StreamYard here, where we're able to stream to multiple audiences. For me, I think part of the problem, and you were asking about this one, like how do you pitch your services in that context? And two, we kind of skirted by it earlier of like, how do you create content that's educational, that's thought leadership, but also have it tie back to lead gen? And for me, it was all about stopping what I call the dead end webinar playbook, where most people do one of two things. They make the webinar a giant sales pitch. And how you get people on those webinars to begin with, I don't know. I've never done webinars that way. Number two is you make it all educational, and then you squeeze in a sales pitch at the end, and it feels kind of awkward, and people are jumping off, and you're like, oh, I got to get this pitch in front of people. And then maybe also you sequence everybody at the end, and you kind of give them a nurture sequence that leads into some sort of CTA to book a demo or a sales call. Problems are everybody sees that playbook coming because we've been running it for 10 plus years now. Number two, only 30 to 50% of people who register for a webinar usually attend live. So that pitch that you're awkwardly squeezing in at the end, you're only getting that in front of, some cases, only 30% of the potential audience. And even then, some people have dropped off over time and aren't at the end. And so the big unlock for me was actually moving that CTA to the registration flow. So I've created what I call a two-step sign-up process for webinars where the registration is super easy. It's the minimal information, just name and email. But as soon as someone registers, you drop them onto a second page that looks like a continuation of the registration process, but you ask them some qualifying and discovery questions. And if they're qualified, you can qualify people out, or you can just frame the question at the end differently. But it ends with a question of, hey, would you like to book a call or a demo with a team that specializes in XYZ, or learn about a platform that helps with X problem, right? And now you're able to get that question in front of basically 100% of people who register for your webinar instead of 30 to 40%. It doesn't come across as too salesy because it's not intrusive with a text or an email. It's just asking them, hey, do you want to go this way or that way? And I've found that two-step sign-up process for me and for my clients took that conversion rate again from that 1 to 2% to the 10 to 15%. And it's working really well for folks to actually get leads, book sales calls, and maybe even close deals before the webinar even happens. Because again, it's happening at the registration process, and most people are starting their promo process for a webinar 2 to 3 weeks out, typically from when you hold the live event.
And if we take the approach I just mentioned, for example, who should I reach out to? That would be complementary. Let's say that I do GTM, right? Like what other experts should I reach out to? Should I pick like 3 niches or just keep it simple? Should I reach out to a bunch of people and whatever their expertise, that's what they can speak about on the actual podcast / webinar, in which there's like 4 experts helping people? And if so, what would be the degree of organization on my end? Would it even be worth it via just blasting cold emails to a bunch of folks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I've actually seen cold email with a content offer of a webinar perform pretty well. I'm running that for a few of my clients right now. So we'll use LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Apollo or another data provider to pick, hey, who do we want to get in front of? What industries, what company sizes, what geos, those sorts of things, and run cold email there. If you take your webinar and you list it as a LinkedIn event, LinkedIn also lets you send direct invites to your first degree connections of about 1,000 at the tune of about 1,000 a day. And so if you have multiple speakers listed, you can kind of give them a Loom video to say, hey, here's how you invite people from your audience and drive them to the LinkedIn event. I've seen organic LinkedIn play well, some LinkedIn ads. So I think you could, create a mixture of promo channels that are going to work for you and your budget and drive significant registration. On the topics, I like having a little bit of both. If all you do is host experts externally that are experts in things that kind of complement what you do, then you're not getting the chance to share your point of view, your expertise, your authority in the areas where you are truly an expert. But if all you do is talk at people about your expertise, then it feels a little bit like I'm shining the spotlight on myself. So I like to mix it up. I like to, when I was at a web development agency, I was bringing in other people who did other things in marketing, like specialists in AI, specialists in conversion rate optimization, or LinkedIn ads. And so I was able to drive more people there based on kind of an overlap in audience.
It's interesting. There's like so many questions, right? Like, well, the first I would start with before I get to the second one is, yeah, like people naturally are like pitchy or salesy. Like, how do I make sure that they actually share something valuable? Like, let's say that I invite them to the event, right? And I brief them and all, and they start to get pretty salesy. They just like shit in the water, right? Like, what should I do then? Should I just stop them, put them off the stage? Like, what should I do there?
Yeah. I mean, well, has it ever happened to you on this podcast or a live stream before?
Yeah, but very rarely, because it's like one-on-one, but in a context in which like they're in front of an audience, a large audience, and everyone's audience, right? It would be different, because also this podcast, I mean, I can just interrupt them, or I can just let them go. But in that context in which like there's multiple viewers from multiple audience, just to be respectful to everyone, that would be a different context.
Yeah, I think it's all about the commitments up front, right? In booking to be a guest with you on this show, I saw that you've got some automation built into kind of the guest questions that then, I was impressed with some of that. I think it would be in your prep call and even in some of your reminders and automations of saying, hey, remember, the goal here is to add value, to not, pitch salesy. If you have a specific content offer that you want for people to take the next step, then have that prepared. We can definitely shout that out, right? Like, I've run webinars with clients of mine where we were doing one all on LinkedIn ads last week, right? And we had prepped, hey, this is going to be educational. It's going to be thought leadership. We went through a dozen mistakes that people make with their LinkedIn ad campaigns. And the presenter, who's my client, Will Rico at Common Mind, we went through that. And anybody, because we were on the same page there, all of it was educational, right? It came from their expertise at Common Mind. They've run campaigns for so many people, but anybody could take that and run with it. So it was on, because we were on the same page before the webinar began. Now, at the same time, we strategically said, hey, let's have a content offer or some sort of value offer that would get someone to take the next step, right? And so having that baked in, people feel like less that they have to make the pitch. So we paused like midway through and we said, hey, Will and the team at Common Mind are doing a free LinkedIn ad account audit for the first 5 people who sign up. Here's a QR code, or here's the link in the chat. Grab that. If you're one of the first 5, you can get a free audit of your account. Obviously, that is a high intent lead for the team at Common Mind. It's value for the audience. And we already had that pre-planned. So Will didn't feel like, when am I going to sneak in the pitch? When am I going to go there? Because we already had that next step planned that was value added, but help people move further down the funnel at the same time.
I'm also thinking of just doing it solo, like not even inviting people, and just say like, hey, we're both connected to this person. Here's a webinar link, but my offer is already so good in cold emails. Like, hey, can I send you a free personalized GTM plan, right? But I guess a bunch of people would show up because they would know that speaker and they would just want to support them. It's just, I'm afraid that would take much of my time and sort of, expose myself to some risk of someone pitching. To mitigate that, I could limit their time on stage as well. It's like, you have 1 minute. I was also thinking of doing it from an investor and startup side of things. So in which startups pitch investors, right? Shark Tank style. That could be interesting and have like a light call to action in there. And for the actual topics, we would need to add lots of value. I guess there's so much, everyone's competing for their attention and their time nowadays. So I guess it really needs to be a webinar, and we do webinars a lot in the Russell Brunson era, like the ClickFunnels, salesy era. And Yeah, there's still that stigma attached to webinars, right? That's like a hard pitch, but quite bullish on that. On the podcast front, are you still running podcast on your end? Like, what's your thesis when it comes to podcasts?
Yeah, so as of right now, I'm getting ready to launch a new podcast under my brand. I don't have that fully fleshed out yet. I am helping some of my clients turn their webinars and repurpose them for additional distribution on their podcasts and via YouTube. So that's kind of my main area with podcasting right now, is repurposing from the webinar, putting on a bumper, putting on, an intro for context and saying, hey, if you miss this, you can hear the recap of this webinar. It was valuable for the 200 people that showed up live, whatever. If you want to see the video because you want to see some of the visuals that we shared during the webinar, check the link in the show notes and go register. So the webinar is feeding the podcast with new content, and the podcast is maybe getting more people into your funnel that are going to the gated version of the content to register and submit their email. So that's kind of how I think about it right now. And I am planning to launch a new show here soon, but it's not off the ground just yet.
Cool. Excited for that. Where can people find out more about you, Logan?
Yeah, easiest place is to find me on LinkedIn. So Logan Lyles, pretty easy to find. Last name is Lyles. And one thing I'll offer to anybody who's watching this live or catches the recording, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, there's a ChatGPT prompt I've been using that's been very effective for my clients to find the top 12 questions that their audience is asking by scanning LinkedIn, X, Reddit, other online community forums, and putting that out into an organized format. And so that for me is great for content planning, whether you're doing podcast, webinars, or live stream, or some mixture thereof. So if you want that ChatGPT prompt, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know you heard me on the show, and let me know you'd like a copy of that prompt, and I can send it to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was Logan Lyles and Charles